Hello and welcome to Silver Age Silver Screen, a podcast where we watch, discuss, and review cult, sci-fi, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
Yeah, and it was the funniest thing. Like, me and Riley were hanging out a few days ago in Antarctica, because that's our favorite place to hang out. He was doing his dumbass water magic that's lame. And then we found this massive iceberg, and I hit it, and we found a dude inside.
Who would have thunk, huh? What are the odds of that?
But don't worry, I knew exactly what to do when you find a dude in the iceberg. You calmly go up to him and say, as monotonely and woodenly as possible, "What is your name?" Ralen, what is your name?
Oh, is that my cue?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We've never done a guess before.
I'm Ralen Stevens. Sorry, I was waiting for I don't know what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
Anyway, hi, I'm Ralen Stevens.
Yeah. Episode 25, big milestone. It's our first guest episode. We have on a friend of ours named Ralen Stevens.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. And today we are, if you didn't get it from that intro, we're reviewing The Last Airbender, released in 2010, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, based on the very good cartoon.
Yeah, so Raylan and I are roommates and we've become friends, and at one point he's obviously a fan of the show. He asked us one day that if we were to ever record an episode about any Last Airbender property, like any season of the show, anything whatsoever, he wants to be a guest star on it. And we thought, absolutely, we'd love to have you on here, but we're going to start with the fucking live action movie. So...
It's a very low bar.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry, man.
No, it's all good.
So, I guess the first thing to go over, what are all of us' relationship to the Avatar The Last Airbender show?
Well, for me, I've been a huge fan since I was a little kid. I started watching the animation about the time I was 12, so a couple years. Probably about the same time the movie actually did come out. I was like 11, 12, about the same age as Aang and the other characters, so I really had a deep connection with it, added to the fact that it was just so incredibly well written and animated, and everything about it is so great. So I have a deep love for the show, as I imagine the other two of you have.
Yeah, I do. I don't exactly remember when I started watching it, but I remember I was at least less than 10 or maybe around 10. But I was the same thing. I remember watching it on TV, and of course, my little 10-year-old brain was just like, oh, that they can shoot fire and water and air and earth. I was like, that's so cool. I remember watching it a lot, and my sister and I used to watch it a lot. And then ever since they put on Netflix, I've been able to relive childhood memories, and it's very interesting because there was a lot of memories that I don't really remember from the later seasons, especially the book 3. So it was really cool to I got to relive watching the show again.
As for me, I actually didn't watch this as a kid. I first saw it as a teenager. I watched Legend of Korra as it came out, and I have more personal attachment to that. I know it's not as good, but it's closer because I watched it as it came out. But I saw this first as a teenager, although my first foray into the Avatar franchise came in 2010 when I saw this movie in theaters in 3D.
Oh, boy.
I watched this before the actual show. This is the only movie we've seen on this show so far that I actually saw in theaters.
Damn.
It gave me a migraine, mostly because of the 3D, but I feel that's very fitting considering this movie's quality.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing, too, is, they had a really terrible 3D conversion in the post-production of this movie. It was filmed to be 2D, but then they sank millions of dollars into it, changing it into a 3D movie, and they only gave it a couple months, which is not enough time to make a movie 3D. And I thankfully have never seen this movie in 3D, but I don't ever plan to. I don't miss anything. I can already tell.
Oh, you don't want to get the immersion?
No, of course not. Why would I want to get immersed into this piece of shit?
Because we don't understand M. Night.
Yeah. I have glasses and I get headaches easily. 3D is a demon technology. I hate it.
I'm pretty sure the only movie I saw 3D like in theaters that I can remember was the first Kung Fu Panda, which is a phenomenal
It
movie.
is.
Let
It
me just
really
Yeah,
say
Kung
that.
is.
Fu Panda is surprisingly good as a series. Like a few weeks ago, I rewatched the second one over
Oh,
Christmas
second
Ooh,
one's
that's the
break.
so
best
good.
one.
Break. Yeah,
That's the
it's
best one.
Yeah.
and like that fucking ending with him like catching the cannonballs and throwing them back. That's way cooler than anything in this movie, which we had to rewatch for this review.
Yep.
Yep. So
So let's just go into it.
I would like to state for the record, this movie had a very troubled production.
Oh god,
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan, who is the writer and director, he also made Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. Unbreakable is one of my all-time favorite movies. Its impact it's had on me as a cinema lover and as an artist cannot be overstated. I love the movie. Then after that, he has a couple movies that people don't love as much, aren't as popular, and then he comes out with The Happening,
Ooh.
The Last Airbender, and After Earth. Back to back to back.
Then he had Split, which was good, but then he had Glass, which wasn't. So, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, here's what I'll say about Glass. First 2/3 are great. The last third ruined all of it. Yeah, anyway, so he started watching the show with his daughters and decided, he's like, this really means a lot to my family, to my children. I really want to make this a live action film. So he wrote a screenplay for basically adapting the entire first season and took it to Paramount, and they basically said, this is a 7-hour script. We're not fucking making this, dude. Basically, you need to condense it all down. Well, how much do you condense a 7-hour movie or a 7-hour TV show? Make it an hour 45 minutes. And then the original creators of the show, they were a part of it, but they were against it from minute one. They were like, no, there's nothing you can add or change or do to the story. Added to the fact that they, the original creators of the show, were campaigning to have a season 4 for the animation. The studio said that they were either going to go with a season 4 or a live action movie. They chose the live action movie, even though they didn't have very much faith in it, but there was a lot of franchise potential here. And now we don't have a season 4. We don't have a season 4 of one of the greatest animated shows ever made. We have a piece of shit movie made by a lot of people who have surprisingly made a lot of really great stuff.
Well, to be fair, you can't place all the blame on Shyamalan.
No, not at
because
all.
from what I've read, I did a little bit of research onto this movie. There was a lot of executive meddling.
Mm-hmm.
The incredibly short runtime, which they needed to do the 3D conversion, which took like half the budget, that wasn't his idea, but the studio wanted it, and it made the movie worse.
No, there's something I really want to say right now, but I think I'm going to save it to the end when I realized it.
I think I know exactly what you're going to say,
Yeah.
but I will also stay quiet.
So, yes, a lot of hate gets thrown onto M. Night Shyamalan for this movie, and I do agree that's very unfair. This is a big studio movie. At the end of the day, whatever the in any movie, granted, in any movie whatsoever, it's like whatever the producer says goes. And a lot of the time, that's against the will of the director and the writers. Typically in lower budget movies, the directors make whatever they want, but in big budget franchise movies, the studio are the ones that have most of the creative control and basically use it to make their own decisions. So a lot of the blame should be put on the producers and the studio as opposed to M. Night Shyamalan. That said, this is a horribly written and directed movie on M. Night Shyamalan's part. Just throwing that out there.
Oh yeah, he messed up. Which is a
Yeah,
shame,
not good.
because he clearly had a lot of passion. This is
Right.
not phoned in. He tried, he just failed
Right.
really, really badly.
Yeah, and I do think that M. Night Shyamalan is a really good director. Like, even some of his other movies that aren't great, he's still a good director. He's proven that he can be a good writer as well. It's just, he's not as great of a writer as he thinks he is sometimes, I feel. And he's also just, not everything he does is absolute gold, you know?
Well, it's perfect. You just don't understand Riley.
Oh, yeah, of
You don't
course.
understand him.
Yeah, naturally. I mean, I'm American. What do I know?
Yeah, you don't know anything.
Wait, he's American too. I confused by what you mean by that.
Okay, so what we're referring to is there was an interview that he did in the campaign trail for this movie where the interviewer asked him something like, "Well, there's a lot of negative press about this movie since it's come out. How do you react to bad press?" Well, first of all, that's a shitty question to ask someone in the campaign trail of their movie. I'm surprised he didn't walk out. So, in defense of him, good for him that he stuck that out. But his response was basically just bashing American audiences, saying like, "Oh, just American critics they just don't understand my movies. It's like no one understands. Critics, they just hate me. Sometimes like it's just so unfair." Like his exact words, I believe, were quote, "On Saturday you're an idiot and no one likes you. Then Sunday you go to China and they're like, "Oh, it's genius." So maybe one day people will realize how good of an artist I am. That's basically what he said.
Americans liked Unbreakable and Americans liked the cartoon, so shut the fuck up, M. Night.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the main reason why he said people don't like his movies is because he has a quote European style. Like the pacing is a little off, a little slower, whereas American audiences they like a lot more fast paced. They like more electricity, action. And he does have a point there. But what I will say is M. Night Shyamalan typically does make a lot of slower paced movies. But this movie, The Last Airbender, is extremely fast-paced.
Yep.
So that argument doesn't make any sense when it comes to this. So that's what we mean by when we don't understand because we're American, because in an interview, Shyamalan stated that American audiences and critics just don't understand his genius.
Well, now I'm regretting that I was defending him earlier. So let's just jump into the plot of this movie.
And before we go into it, I'm sorry, Casey, I want to get this out. Typically when I do these reviews, I write down the plot and I write down my thoughts on it. Well, for this one, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be relying on you, Casey, for the plot because I didn't write down any of the plot. I just wrote down all of the problems I have with it. Like major issues down to like little tiny nitpicks. And I filled up like 2 sides of a loose leaf paper just in
I've got about double my normal notes. There's so much
space
shit
too.
in this movie to talk about.
I know. Like
I was watching him write. He did not skip a single line.
Yeah.
He filled up double-sided paper without skipping a line.
Yes.
Haven't seen that happen since like 2nd grade.
So I apologize, Casey, but I'm going to be relying on you for the plot on this one.
I mean, to be fair, the plot, it's just the plot of the cartoon.
That too.
Except for very, very fast.
That too.
So, the movie actually opens up in a pretty nice way with that really nice opening with the different benders doing their elements. And you're like, hey, maybe this will be good. And then it starts in with the narration from the beginning of the show. Except it's been rewritten by M. Night Shyamalan, and it's just slightly different, and it bugs me, because it's weirdly awkward now. Like, for instance, I wrote down one line from it. Great respect was afforded to all those who could bend their natural element. Like, it's...
Yeah.
All the dialogue in this movie feels off. It feels like it's from Birdemic. It's just... slightly wrong, and it's not helped by the acting.
No, there was a part in the beginning where, well, first off, it starts off with, like, the Paramount logo, the Nickelodeon logo, and they're all, like, themed, like, water, fire, air, and stuff like that. Then it cuts to a narration on top of a text crawl, so it's like, pick a lane, buddy, what are you doing? But
they couldn't decide.
No, exactly.
They're just like, throw both of them in.
Right. But get into the dialogue. There was a part where shots of Katara and Sokka. Oh, I'm sorry. Not Sokka. Katara and Sokka walking down like the through the snow, and Katara says, "Me and my brother went to go hunt for food. Food is scarce this time of year." And it's like, what? Oscar nominated writer here, everybody, says food 2 times in 10 seconds. And I'm paraphrasing that dialogue, but seriously, he said food like, dude, come on.
Just stop. Come on. Reread it.
So through her narration, which is not as well voiced over as in the show, we'll get into Katara later, but
Yeah.
right off the bat, the first lines of the movie, you're like, oh, this is gonna be bad. Through her narration, we get set up to the world. It's a vaguely East Asian inspired fantasy world where people can control various elements with their minds. World used to be in harmony. There was a protector of it called the Avatar who could control all four elements. Then the Fire Nation attacked and forced the Avatar into hiding, and there's been 100 years of war. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty
Interesting
show
premise.
accurate.
It was good for the show.
Yeah.
Hope it's gonna be good in this movie, right?
Hopefully.
No.
I mean, that's the intent. The first introduction to Katara and Sokka and bending in general in this movie is Katara and Sokka, Katara and Sokka are hunting for food, and Katara starts using her bending to create a ball made out of water. And you know what? I thought to myself, that effect is actually pretty cool. Like, it looks alright, it's well rendered, it's fine. And then you realize, like, it's dripping, gushing water out the bottom. Like, all the water is falling out of it. But despite the fact that all the water is escaping at such a high rate, that ball isn't shrinking because it's losing water. So the physics don't make any sense. The CGI is a little spotty every once in a while, but the physics make no sense.
It's hit or miss.
Right. Yeah. We'll let you know when it misses.
I agree with you. The ball actually looked really good. It looked really cool, but they completely overdid it because, like you said, it was pouring out like an ocean amount of water from the bottom, and it was staying the exact size.
Right.
And I think that was them kind of like overdoing it. On like, they're like, hey, look how cool we can make water look in this movie.
Yeah.
Look how much money we spent on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's Appa.
But it's like there's just little details like that are like, how did you not conceivably think of that? That just permeate throughout this movie. Like, as an adaptation, we all know it sucks. We all know it's shit. But it's like, even as a standalone movie, it's shit. It's arguably even worse as a standalone movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just little tiny stuff like that. Like, how did you miss that?
So, Katara and Zuko, they're from the Southern Water Tribe. They live at the South Pole. As they're out hunting, they find this massive glacier that just randomly rises up from the ice. Like in the cartoon, Katara disturbs it with her water bending, but in this, Aang's glacier just shows up. But whatever.
Well, what happens is, Sokka, he's following like a tiger seal or whatever, and then the ice beneath them starts glowing. So he takes out his boomerang, he starts hitting the ice that they're standing on, and then it starts cracking and breaking. They're like, oh, I don't know, I had no idea that was gonna happen when I broke the ice we're standing on.
Why glowing? Well, it was glowing before he disturbed it.
I know. He saw it, and for no reason he just said, alright, I'm gonna crack it open. Crack! Oh shit, we're about to drown. I didn't know that would happen. I've only been living in this place for my entire life.
Yeah, and then the iceberg raises up, and ooh, mysterious iceberg. Sokka says, "Don't hit it," and then Katara just hits it,
In a
and it
terrible,
cracks open.
terrible green screen, by the way.
Oh
I'd like
my
to point
gosh,
out.
that I don't know why it made me laugh so hard. It just looked so weird.
Yeah.
She just like grabbed the boomerang, just ran up to it, and she was just standing. Her body was completely still, and her arms were just swinging. Were the only thing that were swinging, and I don't know why, but it just made me laugh. Like when we were watching the movie, I just started laughing out loud. It just looked really fucking weird. And then the gust of air comes out, and she goes flying back, which you could tell was probably just like a rope that they just stuck on her, and they're like, all right, everyone pull. Everyone grab a piece and start pulling.
The blocking, the editing, and the cinematography are just so awkward in this entire movie. And it makes sense. Like, when you take into consideration Shyamalan's other movies, like, that makes sense. His framing, his blocking, and his characterization, and his directing of actors. It's like, typically in his movies, his characters are very emotionally distant. And the framing and the blocking is very static and very rigid. But that makes sense for the movies he makes. In the context of The Last Airbender, like, it completely doesn't work at all. His characters being very emotionally distant, like David Dunn in Unbreakable, being like very cold and cynical at times even, that makes sense. Aang is not cynical. He's one of the most likable, lighthearted characters in a children's anime you'll ever meet. And that just goes to show, like, Shyamalan was just not the right person for this.
Yeah. Speaking of Aang, they find him inside the iceberg, like in the show. And then they bring him back to their water tribe village, and Katara starts asking him about who he is. And you can tell, oh god, Nicola Peltz is not a good actor, and neither is Noah Ringer.
No.
Oh god, stop letting them talk to each other. Neither of them can act. Every word is so wooden.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about both of them, and Sokka as well. The girl who plays Katara, I already forgot her name. Don't even bother telling me. I don't care. But the only reason she's in this movie is because her dad is a billionaire movie investor who frequently invests in Paramount movies. That's why the only movies that you've seen her in are this, Transformers, and probably some other stuff. I don't know. But because
She's in Bates Motel.
She is in Bates Motel.
Honestly, it's not a good show, but she's better in that than she is in this.
Okay. But, I mean, like, at least the big live-action movies that she's in, they're all Paramount movies, and that's because her daddy is like, put my daughter in this movie or you're not getting my $100 million.
Yeah. Noah Ringer, the guy who plays Aang, on the other hand, he got the role because he's a really good martial artist, and he is pretty good at the physicality of Aang. But
Yeah.
also, this was his first experience acting, and it kind of shows.
Yeah, exactly. He got the role because he's a black belt in Taekwondo. And, like, all of his friends and even his Taekwondo instructor were basically like, hey, you look a lot like Aang from The Last Airbender. So he shaved his head and sent in a videotape of himself doing these Taekwondo moves, sent it to the studio, and they said, you can do that really well. You have no acting experience. You're hired. That's exactly how that went down.
That's what we want. No experience. Get on this project.
Yeah.
And the girl, Shyamalan has actually come out in defense of her, believe it or not. Well, I believe it. But he's stated that she didn't audition. She just sent in an acting reel. Shyamalan has said that her acting reel was the best child acting he's seen since Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. Now, like you said, she's better in the Bates Motel than she is in this. But after everything else that I've seen her in The Last Airbender and Transformers Age of Extinction, I really, really doubt that she is as good as Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. I really doubt it.
I forgot she was in Transformers.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that earlier and being like, oh my gosh. She was also in Inhumans for 2 episodes, I believe she was credited.
Of course she was in Inhumans.
Yeah, yep, she was in Inhumans. She's credited in 2 episodes.
I feel like there's no getting around it. We gotta talk about it sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Katara's white.
Okay. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The show is heavily based on East Asian culture for most of the nations, but Inuit specifically for the Water Tribe, and they're never referred to in the show as Inuit, but they do have noticeably darker skin tone than the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
So, whitewashing, yay. Why does that seem to happen in so many movies we do on this show?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I give props to the studio and to Hollywood. They hired a non-white filmmaker, M. Night Shyamalan, to make a film about non-white characters and culture and story. For those of you who don't know, Shyamalan was born in India. They got a filmmaker from India, a country in Asia, to make a film about Asian characters based on various East Asian countries.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's great. But then
That's a good thing.
they immediately turn around and say, oh yeah, we're going to cast half the people, all of the main people, at least for the most part, as white people. Like,
And you know what's the weird thing? If you, look at the shots in the Southern Water Tribe, they're actually played by Inuit actors!
Yeah.
Except for the ones who have lines!
They're like, listen, we'll give you the correct actors, but they'll be in the background.
Right.
We need the real talent up front.
Yeah.
Like I said, I give props to Hollywood. They hired a non-white filmmaker to make film about non-white characters. I give them props. But then they immediately shoot themselves in the foot by whitewashing the entire movie. And Shyamalan actually has come out in defense of the whitewashing. He says that the good thing about the animation is that it is multicultural. When you look at the animation, you don't, in his opinion, you don't typically think, oh, they're Asian. You can hire a white kid as long as he fits the character. And I'm sure that was their reasoning for doing that, because unfortunately, there are not a lot of roles in Hollywood for Asian actors, particularly Asian child actors. It's terrible and unfortunate, but it's an unfortunate truth. There's not a lot of roles in Hollywood for Asian American actors, just Asian actors in general. And so I'm sure what their reasoning was the fact that they wanted to find child actors that, instead of looking the part, could play the character the best. They could embody the characters of Aang, Katara, and Sokka. They could play the characters the best as opposed to looking like them. So their priority was finding the best actors to portray these characters. The problem with that, again, they're terrible fucking actors! Like, what? None of this makes any sense! They hire a bunch of Asian and Inuit and Indian extras, and even some actors as well. They hire an Indian filmmaker, and then they whitewash it, but any conceivable reason as to why is flushed down the toilet, because it's like, they're terrible actors anyway. And that's saying something too, because Shyamalan has made movies with phenomenal child acting performances, like The Sixth Sense, to a lesser extent, Unbreakable. Those have fantastic child performances. And in this movie, they're all bad. All of the acting in this movie.
But they got the dude from Twilight.
Oh, yeah, you're
It
right.
can't be bad.
Yeah, Sokka is played by a dude who plays a supporting character in Twilight. And I feel like we need to bring that up, because Jackson Rathbone, in 1 year, was in 2 Razzie-nominated movies. I feel like at that point you have to reconsider your roles, man.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think I'm qualified to talk about the Twilight discussion because I have an older sister who's 4 years older than me. So when we were kids, she had priority over the TV a lot of the times. But I was also doing a little bit of research on this film, and I saw the actor, and I clicked on him. I was just like, oh, I want to see what else he's been doing. And then I saw it at the top. It was Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. I was like, oh gosh, please say he was a small role in it. And I kept scrolling down. Then it was like Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1. Then it was, I think Eclipse was the other one. And then it was New Moon. And then it was just Twilight. And then that's when I remembered that, oh, he was the dude with no emotion in that movie. Literally, that entire movie.
You have to be more specific, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
He was one of the many non-expressive people in the movie. And then I looked up actual pictures of, I think his character's name was like Jasper or something. So I looked up the character just on Google Images to see if I can recognize his face. And no, absolutely. From what I can vaguely remember from those movies, he literally was the quiet one of the group. Not only is he not a good actor, but then his previous acting credits, he had to play a character that didn't have to act. But they saw that and they were just like, no, bring him on as Last Airbender as one of the main characters.
Yeah. Not only are they bad actors, but they just don't embody the phenomenal characters that the show made. Like, Aang is supposed to be an incredible, loud personality. Katara, yeah, she's supposed to be concerned, but she's supposed to kind of be like the mother of the group, be that guiding light. Sokka is supposed to be hilarious and funny and witty, and absolutely none of that shines through in this movie.
Ooh, there's not a single joke.
Yeah.
Sokka is so bad. Like, I think Sokka might be my favorite character from the original show.
Yeah.
He's usually used as comic relief, but he occasionally gets episodes where he's the smart guy. And none of the episodes where he's smart are adapted into this, and that's fine. But also, none of him being comedic is in this, so he's just this boring dick who's following them around and just existing.
Water Tribe.
Who is noticeably way older than the other two actors.
Yeah.
I believe he's 11 years older than the actress that plays Katara, who I also forgot that actress's name. But I remember seeing that he was 11 years, he's 11 years older than she was. And I was like,
God, I looked
showed.
it up. He was 26.
Yes, he was 26 years old. His brain fully developed and was like, yes, I want to do this movie.
Hanging out a bunch of kids all day in a really bad movie.
And speaking of bad, so in the plot, Aang and Katara talk, and Aang explains his backstory, and we get the perfect synthesis. I think it's probably the worst piece of dialogue in the entire film. Well, maybe. There's one that might be, I think, is actually maybe worse. But this awful, awful synthesis of bad acting and horrible dialogue. Aang explains his backstory as, and I quote, "I ran away from home. There was a storm. We were forced underwater." Katara says, "Oh, I see." And Aang says, "It wasn't very smart." What? Oh, God.
When we watched the movie, when he said that, and then they just started talking about something completely different, I looked at Riley and I was like, I guess that's it for that.
Yeah.
Just one sentence and it's all done.
Yeah.
And we're going really in depth, but you gotta remember, this movie in the first half has ridiculously fast pacing.
Yes.
Everything we've talked about is like the first 5 minutes.
We spent a half an hour talking about 5 minutes. That was also the scene where we saw Aang's tattoos. But in this film, it's not really a tattoo. It's like henna tattoos. So that's shit. So
Can I
that's
say
shit.
something? This
Yeah,
may be
go ahead.
an unpopular opinion or a hot take. I think the costuming in this movie is really good. Just overall, the costuming in every scene is fantastic. Props
Yeah.
to the costume department.
Yeah. I don't
I
disagree.
really like how they did Aang's tattoos with, instead of them being these blocky blue cartoon tattoos, they are actual intricate, realistic looking tattoos. I think it really works.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Looks like henna.
It might be weird to try and like compare this, but I feel like if this was real life, the movie version of his tattoos would probably be more realistic. You know, obviously the tattoos, you know, it's culture specific. It's like only the air nomads get it, and it's only like I believe if like masters get it or something from what I can remember from the show. So I guess it would make more sense why it was like a detailed tattoo, because like that would give him more meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I think the reason a lot of people have problems with the tattoo is because it's just like, you know, the blockiness of it is so iconic that that's what everyone expects. Also, it's not noticeable in the fight scenes. Like, you could see Aang's blue arrow all the time. Like, in the fight scenes of this movie, since, you know, it's like black writing, you can't even really see it in the fight scene. So he kind of just looks like a bald monk.
Also, now that I think about it, Airbender tattoos in the show are hardcore. Like, those are just thick lines. Like,
Yeah, and they're all over his body.
yeah, like, that
They
would
go
have
from his
taken,
feet
like,
to his head.
15 hours of Aang. Like, go Aang in the show.
Yeah.
And Aang in this, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I do agree with you. I think the costuming is very, very well done. It does make sense for a more realistic portrayal that the tattoo would look like that. I'm just saying, first thing I thought of every single time is, oh yeah, his henna tattoo.
Yeah. I wonder what astrology sign he is.
What's your sun sign, Aang? Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Aang.
Yes. So we've made jokes about, but mispronounce isn't the right word. It's intentional. So first off, most of the names in Avatar: The Last Airbender, they aren't real names. They were made for the show.
Right.
M. Night Shyamalan looked at them and decided, oh, I should make these more correct Asian pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, a lot of the names are not spelled like how they would be in Japanese or Korean or Chinese. But you could just change the spelling instead of making Iroh be Eero.
Sokka being Soka, Aang being Aang.
Add an A to the front of Iroh's name when it's written down. Who gives a shit?
Right.
Eero sounds bad. Sounds dumb. Sokka. What the fuck even is Sokka?
It's not even Avatar, it's Avatar.
Oh, the avatar. Oh, that was the first thing that I think I wrote down.
And that's an English word! You can't correct it because... this is such a bad movie!
Like, again, it's just the little tiny details of this that you just... Why did you have to change that? Like, why can't it just be Aang? Why can't it be Avatar, Sokka, Iroh? Like, why couldn't you just fucking leave it alone, dude? Like, seriously, it's just little tiny stuff like that piss me off.
The little changes in this movie, there's so many that it builds up. That's why they're so annoying.
Right.
It's because there's so many tiny little mistakes. Like you said, it's like, why change that? And then the next scene, it's like, well, why did they change that? And then the next scene, why did they change that? And then it just keeps building more and more.
Until you realize, like, until you come to the conclusion, what the hell is any of this worth, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wanna know
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
getting back to the plot, wanna know what's one of the absolute most hilarious bad minor changes?
What's that?
The bring me all your elderly line. So in the show, Zuko, he sees the light coming from the water tribe. He's like, that must be the Avatar. He goes there, and then he says, I'm looking for the Avatar. He's a very old man. Bring me all your elderly. And in this, it mostly happens the same, except Zuko doesn't explain that the Avatar is supposed to be 100 years old. He just walks into the water tribe and shouts, Bring me all your... Bring me all your elderly! Like, are you looking for old ladies to have sex with? Like, what is your deal, Zuko?
He's got to get some somehow.
Yeah.
Just gotta get the elderly.
Yeah,
It was
of
his
course.
orders. What
Right.
is he supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, man's got to follow orders. But I think that's a good segue to another one of my problems with it. Dev Patel was cast as Fire Prince Zuko. Now, Dev Patel is a very good actor, but he is terribly miscast as Prince Zuko. Oh my god. And I get that Zuko is like a whiny little kid, like that's his thing, but in this movie, he is not intimidating whatsoever. None of the villains are, and we'll get into that. The Fire Lord, Admiral Zhao, even Zuko to an extent, they're supposed to be intimidating figures. But in this movie, the most intimidating looking person is Iroh. And he's not supposed to be the most intimidating one.
Him and Aang are supposed to be like the nicest people in the show.
Right, exactly.
Want to know part of the reason why Zuko isn't intimidating? And it's not really Dev Patel's acting, I feel. I think Dev Patel's not great in this, but he feels great because he's up against the worst actors I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But you know what the problem with Zuko is?
What's that?
Hey, where's his fucking scar? Does Zuko even have a scar in this movie?
Oh my god. I kept saying that the entire time throughout the movie.
It's visible in like 2 shots total. It's so tiny, unnoticeable. In the show, it covers half of his face. And I mean, they could have made it really, really terrifying looking.
Yeah.
Like some Harvey Dent ass shit. But no, he doesn't have the fucking scar.
Right, exactly. And it's so bad. Like, you're right. Like, it could have been terrifying to look at. Like, this guy with just his eye almost completely burned off. You could have done that. But no, he just has like a slight sunburn.
The scar doesn't just make Zuko intimidating. The scar, once you find out where it came from, it makes him look pitiful. Sympathetic, because he had an abusive childhood and that's the way he is, but he doesn't have the fucking scar in this, so you don't get that. Oh, also, finally, people of color in this movie.
Yeah.
Actually, from what I've read, they cast a white actor for Zuko and then realized, oh shit, we have an all-white cast. So they cast Dev Patel, which he's Indian, not Japanese, which is what the Fire Nation's based off, but it's something. Although it is kind of not great that because of how all the races of the characters have been mixed up, all the good guys are white and all the bad guys are Indian and Middle Eastern.
Yes.
You see, when you make your film one racial group fighting another group, you have to kind of think about that.
That was another one of those, again, little details. Like, in the animation, the water tribes have darker skin complexions, whereas the Fire Nation have a bit lighter. But in this film, it's like they're flipped. You know? And again, absolutely, like you're saying, all the villains have darker skin, whereas all the good guys are white. Thanks, M. Night Shyamalan. Thank you.
I just want to throw out there real quick before we move on. Jesse McCartney was originally cast to play Zuko.
Oh, God.
But he didn't because of scheduling conflicts. Just want to let that sink in. That singer, that teenage singer from back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s that every single white girl in America was in love with.
Right. I remember he was a member of the Irish Nationalist Party back in the 1800s, right?
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I love you and you're beautiful. Yeah, I know that guy.
That was, exactly.
I know that guy.
May have looked up the wrong Justin McCarthy.
Now that guy, imagine that guy as Zuko.
Oh, God.
Now, would you be terrified or would you fall in love? You don't know.
He was in all 4 Alvin and the Chipmunks movies.
Oh my god, cast him right now. Bring him in.
Who did he play? He played one of the Chipmunks, didn't he? Ooh, come on.
I bet you he played who's the green one?
He played
one? Theodore?
He played Theodore. He played the fat one.
Oh,
yeah, Theodore gonna capture the Avatar.
Oh my god.
Restore
yes.
his honor.
Oh my god. Yeah, Slumdog Millionaire is so much better as Zuko.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? It's Theodore.
Patel's at
He's
least
intimidating.
a decent actor.
Yeah, I mean...
Maybe not the best in this, but in other things.
Yeah, that's funny.
So, Fire Nation, they capture the Avatar, they bring him back to their ship. And actually they add in a scene of Iroh testing Aang to see if he's the Avatar. That was really nice. Put a candle in front of him, candle gets stronger. Put a rock in front of him, rock shakes, etc. That was a nice little touch.
Right, yeah.
I'm complimenting this movie on every single time I see something good. I think there's only going to be like 1 or 2 more times that happens, but can't be too negative.
I think there was only one thing I wrote down that was positive. and it is coming up soon.
Yeah,
So
same. I
I
think.
had 5 total. I've burned through 3 of them, and we're 10 minutes into the film.
Oh god.
Katara and Sokka, they take Aang's flying bison to go rescue Aang after being told by their grandmother that they have to go save him because he's the Avatar and all wars are won in the hearts of people. Okay, I guess that's this movie's theme. Oh, also, Katara and Sokka's grandmother, she really briefly and really awkwardly mentions Hama from the show, who was the bloodbender later.
yes.
M. Night Shyamalan likes Avatar. He just can't make it. But
Yeah.
yeah, they add in a few references to things that happen later in this series.
Yeah, that's clever. That's smart. That's good filmmaking, right?
Because they probably were going to do it in the canceled sequels.
Yeah, of course.
Or maybe
Oh,
not.
God.
Maybe they would have cut that scene so they can make it 3D again.
Oh god, like, this movie is awful, but there is an alternate universe where they made the other two. There's an alternate universe
And we need to
where
get there.
the Southern Raiders took 2 minutes of screen time. And that terrifies me, because the show got more and more plot-based and less episodic as the show went on. And if you made 2 more of these, it wouldn't have worked.
Or they would do what all young adult properties adaptation bullshits do, and that just split the last one into 2 movies.
I'm glad that that trope is dead now.
Yeah, Twilight did it. I just brought it up earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, Twilight did it, Divergent did it, Hunger Games did it, Harry Potter started it, but it was actually good in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I forgot that Hunger Games did it.
I never watched Hunger Games, so.
I never watched the other 2, but I read the book.
I have seen those movies, but I forgot a good majority of those movies because they were pretty easily
Right.
forgettable.
Yeah, which is a shame, because the books are actually pretty good. But we're off topic. Katara and Sokka, they rescue Aang, and then we get into the basic concept of the show. Traveling the world, helping people, heading towards the North Pole so Aang can learn waterbending. Also, this is the only time before the climax that Zuko tries to capture Aang.
They give up on that pretty quickly.
They cut out all the episodes where he tries to do it, so I guess their rivalry and him being this reoccurring villain who eventually joins up with them, that doesn't really work because they fight him twice.
I will say that scene where Aang or sorry, Aang. I'm only going with this movie term because this isn't Aang, Sokka, and the Avatar. It's Aang, Sokka, and Avatar. So I'm gonna keep correcting myself. The scene where Aang escapes from Zuko's captivity, when he flies off the ship on his glider and he flies up to Appa, where Katara and Sokka are, that was actually a really cool shot. Like I turned to you, Raylan, and I said, "Okay, that was actually pretty cool. That was well shot."
Yeah, it was pretty dope. It was a nice shot.
There are some moments with noticeably bad CG in this movie that we're gonna make fun of, but most of the time it's really good, especially for 2010.
There's a lot of really good CGI moments in this, along with the costume design, production design. That said, most of the green screen is shit, and there's a lot of shit CGI.
Ooh, yeah, the green screen was very distracting in my opinion.
Because halfway through production, they decided to take away a big chunk of the budget and put it towards 3G. They filmed all the stuff in the Northern Water Tribe on location. They did not film much else on location, and it kind of shows.
But that could work, theoretically. Like the 2016 live-action reboot of The Jungle Book. All of that was shot on sound stages, and that was a pretty good movie.
Oh, that was a good looking movie.
Yeah, so it works. But it could have not worked, and this is an example of when it doesn't work.
So, Aang, Katara, and Sokka, they go to the Southern Air Temple, Aang's home, and they find that all the airbenders are dead. Aang is the last of his kind. He freaks out, and it doesn't really have any impact because A, Aang hasn't been cheerful at all, so seeing him snap isn't contrasted. And B, Katara and him don't have really much chemistry or time to build a relationship, so that doesn't work.
I mean, in the show, and I get it, I've stated in the past, like, I've tried to look at these films objectively, not as an adaptation, but fuck this movie. The show's great. This movie's shit. As an adaptation, it's shit. That's a lot of points off of this. But in the show, it's like, It was such a powerful moment. Aang is looking at the dead body of his father figure, and he breaks down and almost destroys the entire temple because of his outrage.
Yeah, and how we get snapped out of it is Katara and Sokka basically saying, we will be your family now. We love you, but no, they haven't had any chemistry or Okay, we're talking a lot about how this film is too short for its own good. And this film made a very big mistake in how it adapted. It cut out what it thought was filler. Like, any of the scenes of the characters goofing off and hanging out with each other were cut. And you're like, oh, well, those weren't relevant to the plot. But we need those scenes that establish character and establish relationships, because otherwise the emotional impact of these scenes doesn't hit.
And I know we've talked about it. Like, there's a lot of people saying, like, the problem is trying to cram a 22 episode season into an hour and 45 minute movie. And there is absolutely a lot of validity to that. But I think, Casey, you rewatched the animation in preparation for this.
Yes,
so.
last month I rewatched the whole first season in preparation for this review. It was very good. I'm not complaining. This movie primarily adapts 7 episodes: The Boy and the Iceberg, The Avatar Returns, The Southern Air Temple, Imprisoned, The Blue Spirit, and Siege of the North Parts 1 and 2. It also features a few scenes from other episodes like The Storm or The Waterbending Master, but it's mostly those 7 episodes. So 7 20-minute episodes, that's 140 minutes. And that's not unreasonable for a children's movie. Like, we watched Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone a few months ago. That was the same length, and that was good.
Exactly.
But okay, you cut out some. You cut out, let's say, 20 minutes. You get rid of some pointless scenes. Okay, let's go 40 minutes. Let's do like 2/3 of what we need. That could still work. You could just take those scenes from the movie and they would work. But they don't work in this. And I think a big part of the problem is this isn't just cramming 7 episodes into 100 minutes. The pacing in this movie is so off. Everything we've said so far, the adaptation of the first 3 episodes of 7, that was 22 minutes. I wrote it down. The first 3 episodes happen in 1/3 of the time. The movie's pacing is so fast at the start, and you know what the problem is? The movie's pacing slows down as time goes on, but the poor acting doesn't, which makes it even more clear that the problem isn't the time, because the Siege of the North starts with 46 minutes left in the movie. They do basically the last 2 episodes of the first season in the same amount of time, and they cut things out, and yet it takes longer, and it is so much worse. The problem is not time. The problem is that the writing is shit and the acting
absolutely.
is shit.
I mean, that was another thing. Like, when Shyamalan was saying, like, American audiences, they just don't understand my style because a lot of my pacing is a bit slower, a bit off. But it's like, no, this movie is extremely fast-paced. In general, like, it goes by so fast. And I will say, the one plus side of this movie, if for nothing else, yeah, some of the CGI is pretty decent. Yeah, the costume design, production design is pretty on point at times. But for nothing else, I thought it was a really quick watch. Like, an hour and 45 minutes went by pretty quickly for me.
Honestly, a lot of the bad movies we watch on this show, we do not enjoy watching. I fucking loved watching this movie. It was so enjoyable. This is so bad it's good. It is hilarious. There were like 10 different times where I just burst out laughing. This movie, hot take, is funnier than anything in the original show for all the wrong reasons.
That is a very strong claim, sir.
The 4 of us, Ralen, our buddies Slade, Michael, and I, we were just talking throughout the entire movie, laughing at how all the...
Yeah, and we didn't miss anything either. We talked throughout the entire movie and we didn't miss a single thing. We remember every single scene and every little wrong detail, even though we were talking and complaining about it. Like, we were still complaining about problems in the first 3 scenes halfway through the movie.
While they're at the Southern Air Temple, Aang has a vision of this dragon, and I'm just mentioning it now because it comes back later, but oh god, the dragon sucks.
Oh, yeah, it does. The dragon looks, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but when you see the dragon later in the movie, you get to see more of, like, the actual body of the dragon. And I don't know why this bothered me, but, like, the neck of the dragon was really thin and unusually long. Like, it was very distracting, and I don't know why. I didn't like that.
Oh, you misunderstand. You think that I'm saying that the dragon is shit because it's bad CG. It is bad CG. It's terrible from a writing perspective. This dragon character, basically all the spiritual stuff, like Aang talking to his past life avatar Roku, Aang talking to his father figures, Aang talking to the spirits at the end in the Siege of the North. All that's just condensed into some random dragon that I don't really know what his deal is, and he's boring, and he comes back later, but Yeah, Aang meets a boring dragon. Woohoo. On to the dumbest part of the movie. Oh, yes. Episode 4, they're adapting. Imprisoned. That great episode where a bunch of earthbenders are taken to this metal ship and they can't escape from it because it's made of metal.
And it's on water.
Oh, yes. Let's fucking talk about this stupid scene.
The most iconic scene and shot from this movie. By far.
Easily my favorite part of the movie.
It's hilarious.
It's amazing. Everything about it is so perfectly bad. It's great. It feels like a parody, like a YouTube parody of that episode.
Oh god, I just remembered it.
Oh, the famous scene?
Yes,
famous
the
fight?
dance.
Yeah.
So, the gang, they go to an earthbender prison. They're actually brought there after this Fire Nation guard, arrests a small boy for earthbending. Not for using earthbending to save a guy crushed in a mine, for using earthbending to throw small stones at the Fire Nation soldiers. It really hurt. God. But yeah, they go to this prison for earthbenders. And let's take a look at this prison. It's outside, on top of rocks. In the show, the earthbenders were imprisoned on a metal ship because they can't control metal. And how Aang and Katara save the day is they knock the ship's coal onto the deck so the earthbenders have something to control. In this fucking movie, they're in an open air prison with a bunch of earth around.
Yeah.
I mean, what can we even say about this? It's so stupid. It's like in the third X-Men movie, The Last Stand, where Magneto, what's his power? He can control metal. Where is he gonna hide out? In the middle of the fucking woods where there's no metal around. It's just, how long did you think about this? For 1 fucking second, dude. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and Aang, not Katara, by the way, and we'll get into that a bit later. There's some sexist undertones in this adaptation, but Aang tells the Earthbenders, hey, you can Earthbend, and they're like, oh yeah, we can Earthbend. And then they earthbend.
Oh yeah, I forgot we could do this. When I was kind of writing down my notes and rethinking about this phenomenal scene, absolutely no mistakes. One thing that I kind of thought about, I said, all they really did, like you just said, the only reason they were like, oh yeah, we can earthbend is because they saw Aang and Katara fight. But what doesn't make sense in the context of the movie is as the Fire Nation keeps imprisoning more and more earthbenders, there's going to eventually, even if Aang and Katara never got there, eventually there's going to be more earthbenders than firebenders. So even if they didn't show up, they would have been able to just win the battle easy because eventually there will be a lot more earthbenders and firebenders. So that was just another thing on top of the famous rock dance that was so beautiful.
Oh god, we haven't even discussed the pebble dance. There is a scene in this big fight scene. By the way, the fight scenes of this movie kind of suck because you can clearly see that the actors are just standing away waiting for their move. That's not how you do a long shot. You have to have people always doing stuff as opposed to just waiting. By the way, during this big fight scene, we see 7 earthbenders working together, dancing, to raise up one tiny rock. It's like the size of a human head. And then one more earthbender comes in and kicks it at a dude. That took so many earthbenders to move a small stone.
My favorite thing about that is not only does it take 6 or 7 guys to just move the rock, right? It only takes one guy to punch it into the firebender. It probably takes the same amount of force to lift it. So why would you need 6 guys to lift it, but then a dude who's essentially punching it into another person, you only need one person to do that?
Yeah, all the benders in this movie are so weak. In the show, Toph is greatest earthbender ever, but in the show, there is a famous scene where an entire castle... Oh god, I'm sorry, I pulled up the scene just so I could watch it. It's so bad. It's ridiculous. In the show, there is a pretty cool scene where Toph, a single earthbender, holds up an entire stone temple. In this movie, it takes 7 earthbenders to throw a rock.
I'm really glad you brought up Toph because, Riley, this is what I was going to tell you earlier, but I re-looked up the scene on YouTube just so I can, make sure that I'm accurate when I'm talking about it in the podcast. But I scrolled down just to take a peek at the comments because, every once in a while on YouTube, you'll find that one really funny comment. And someone wrote down, "Thank God Toph is blind so she didn't have to see that atrocity." And I was like, that's amazing. That is absolutely true.
I remember all of the... Because when this movie came out, the show was still airing. This movie came out like within weeks of the Ember Island Players episode, which is an episode where the main characters watch a terrible play about themselves, and it's so fitting.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah. I mean, 6 guys in unison, in a triangle formation, do a terrible choreographed dance and lift a tiny rock into the air, and then a 7th guy comes in and throws it at a guy.
And you know, honestly, that's ridiculous. But the sheer stupidity of it makes it easy to brush that off as being why bending in this movie is bad, because it takes so many people. Bending in this movie does not work like in the show. In the show, it's like they're doing martial arts moves and the bending is going with them. Like they move their arm and the water follows it. They punch, a bunch of fire comes out. In this show, they do like a charge up dance and then the bending happens. It takes like 5 seconds of charge up for any bending. They need to do the pebble dance because otherwise they can't move it. Why? I don't fucking know.
That was one thing that I was telling Riley about earlier was the pebble that they're moving is basically in the middle of the frame and they're only about like halfway through their dance.
Yeah.
It's like right when it gets in front of the one guy who's about to punch is like right when they finish it. I'm like, wow, why was that so long for so many people to move one rock?
God.
It's amazing.
The thing about
beautiful.
bending in the show is earthbending is based on brute strength. It gets very, very powerful. And then through the simple action of taking 7 guys to throw a pebble at a guy, it just throws that out the window. And another thing that in theory does make sense to me, but it just, again, messes with the show, is the fact that in the movie they changed the firebender's ability to just create fire out of nothing to they need a source like the other benders. Now,
oh my gosh. I'm so glad you brought that up.
In context, in the lore, that does make sense. In theory. It does make sense because, like, earthbenders and waterbenders, they need a source. If they don't have that, then they can't bend. Firebenders, I guess in concept, in order for it to be fully fitting, I mean, airbenders need a source as well, but the air is always around us. It does, in theory, make sense why, but it completely betrays the intimidation factor when it comes to the villains. Like, the scary thing about the firebenders is they can create fire, arguably the most destructive element, out of nothing. Like, that's scary. Some guy can walk up to you and burn your face off out of nowhere. That's fucking terrifying. But in this show, they need to wait until they light up a fire on the ground, and then they can do it. You know, it's just not intimidating.
In all the fight scenes now, there are just random torches that the firebenders are getting their fire from. And for some reason, our waterbender and airbender main characters never put out the torches.
Exactly.
I believe it only happens once, and it was at the end of the movie. Or at least I only saw it happen once.
Like right before the Siege of the North, they say, put out all the torches so they can't control them. And they leave a bunch of torches, and the Water Nation deserved to be destroyed for being so dumb.
I know.
Also, the thing that firebenders are creating their element, I mean, that's... fire isn't a thing. Like, fire isn't a thing that exists in the way that earth and water and air is. Fire is temporary. Fire is a chemical reaction, primarily involving oxygen, which is in the air. I mean, sure, where the fuck are they getting the carbon? I don't know, but turning air into fire isn't super unreasonable in a series where waterbenders can turn water into ice. You're creating energy constantly in this show. I feel like creating a bit of carbon to facilitate the chemical reaction isn't that different.
Don't they explain at some point in the show that firebending is more of like your inner chi?
Yeah, it's like they're moving their body heat, which...
Yeah.
I mean, that's not... Fire is more than just heat, but yeah, they try and hand wave it, and they could have hand waved it in this.
But they don't.
And also, it's in the last scene, but while we're on the topic, there's a scene where Iroh just creates fire out of nowhere because he's such a good bender, which makes all of this pointless. Firebenders can't create fire because they're weaklings, not because of any physics issue.
Yep. Don't they say, I think I pointed it out when we were watching it, but when that scene happens, when the firebender like extras are running, I think one guy in the background goes, he's creating fire, and then they're just running.
He made fire out of nothing.
I was like,
He
what?
made fire out of nothing.
He was like, he made fire out of nothing, and he just kept running.
Also, this movie features like a stinger where they talk about basically the overarching thing from the show with Sozin's Comets coming in the summer, or in 3 years because they need time to film the movies. Sozin Comets coming, and that boosts Firebender's strength. In the show, it boosts them enough that Iroh is able to burn a hole through this massive stone wall. In this movie's continuity, Sozin's Comet gives Firebenders the ability to create fire. You know, the thing they can do in the show.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I mean, come on. Seriously.
What a movie.
How far are we into this?
Like, I don't know, like 30
God
minutes?
damn it.
It's our 25th episode. We can do a bit longer. Plus, we have a guest. So, after the dumb Earth Kingdom scene, Aang and Katara and Sokka start liberating other Earth Kingdom villages. They advertise the fact that he's the Avatar and print out posters of him, because they're idiots. And that gets the attention of Admiral Zhao, played by that one dude from The Daily Show.
Again, just going with the idea that the villains of this film are not intimidating. Every time I saw Admiral Zhao, all I thought was that scene in Spider-Man 2 where Peter Parker's pizza store boss ripped the sticker off his helmet. That's all I thought of.
What an evil guy.
And I mean, he tries, and he's not intimidating like Zhao, but he's one of the better actors in this movie, even though that isn't saying much.
True.
Asif Mandvi is his name, by the way. And Admiral Zhao is also hunting the And Admiral Zhao... stumbling over my words. And Admiral Zhao is also hunting the You know how this happens when you mess up a line once and then you can't say it ever again? Admiral Zhao is also hunting the Avatar. And he, meets with Zuko, and we get some exposition about how Zuko's the banished prince, and he lost his honor. Also, this movie sucks at exposition.
Yeah.
There is a bit later on with Zhao, a scene that opens with him just saying, "As you know, Fire Lord Oze," explains the plot of the movie. Oh, God.
If you knew, then why...
It literally says, "As you know."
Well, he already knows. Why are you explaining?
Oh, also, one thing about Zhao, in the show, he briefly mentions, right before the Siege of the North, that he found some scrolls that helped him find out information about the Water and Moon spirits. And later in the show, it's revealed that he got those from the Great Library when they go to the Great Library. And, okay, that's a cool bit of foreshadowing. In this, he, 10 different times mentions, "I found these scrolls in the Great Library. When I was visiting the Great Library, the Great Library, shut up about the Great fucking Library! Yeah. It was one throwaway line in the show, and he says it 5 times!
God damn. Great writing. Thank you, Shyamalan.
They just really want you to understand that there's gonna be a sequel.
Yeah. Oh, also, shout out to whoever did this to the Wikipedia page. Someone edited it, so in the cast page it says, God, I hate the fact that I don't know how to pronounce that name. It's been years since I watched The Daily Show. Mandvi as Admiral Zhao, a hot-tempered Fire Nation commander in pursuit of the Avatar. He is Zuko's principal rival. He has an obsession with libraries. Shout out to you, Wikipedia editor.
Oh my gosh.
So Zhao decides to hunt the Avatar, and he captures Aang when Aang goes to the Northern Temple and a guy betrays him, which is it's mixing a few things from the show, whatever. But Admiral Zhao captures Avatar Aang and imprisons him, which means it's time for episode 5 of 7, The Blue Spirit, which is a great episode. This mysterious dude wearing a demon mask, which I'm going to say looks really good.
Yes.
Props.
I agree.
Good mask.
This dude wearing a demon mask breaks in and frees Aang, and they fight together to break out. And there's actually some pretty creative stuff. I don't know if it's good, because it's kind of dumb, but it's at least
it's
unique.
edited horribly.
They fight in the Airbender training grounds, and there are these sliding doors that Aang uses to bottleneck the Fire Nation soldiers. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, in all these fight scenes, and continuing through the movie, 90% of the firebenders aren't firebending. They're just trying to melee people.
Why aren't you all attacking him? There's 100 of you.
In that scene, they're like taking
Yeah.
their turns.
Yeah.
They're like looking side to side. It's like, is it my turn? Oh, okay. No, it's your turn. And then two guys go in, and
Should
then
we throw fire at this swordsman? Nah, let's just go at him one at a time.
Right. And I don't necessarily blame the choreographers for that, because that scene was written to have like 100 Fire Nation soldiers in the courtyard fighting with them. So it's like, okay, what are they going to do? So write a situation where they're maybe, I don't know, running through the hallways, running through the corridors.
Yeah, in the show, it's the Blue Spirit fighting guards and being stealthy in the hallways. And there's like this great moment that it's one of my favorite moments in the whole first season, and I'm mad that they got rid of it. A firebender tries to firebend at the Blue Spirit, and the Blue Spirit just chucks a bucket of water on him and punches him. But anyway, the Blue Spirit and Aang fight alongside each other, and then the Blue Spirit realizes, wait a minute, the Fire Nation doesn't want Aang dead. They want him captured, because if he dies, he'll reincarnate. So he puts his sword to Aang's throat and like uses him as a hostage to get out, which is directly taken from the show, and it's really good. So the Blue Spirit escapes with Aang, and then he gets shot in the face by an arrow and his mask breaks. And it's revealed that it's Zuko, and that he's rescuing Aang so he can take Aang for himself. And, okay, that's pretty cool. It would have worked better if we actually had Zuko fighting Aang more, but it works.
One thing, first off, like the Blue Spirit mask, though the hair on top of it looks like shit. It just looks so bad.
The hair is awful.
Yeah, it looks dumb, but that's like actual Japanese-only mask. Plus, they make all the Fire Nation soldiers look like samurai instead of like whatever the fuck they are doing in the show, where they're just obviously evil red uniforms.
Some with masks.
It's like none of the characters in this have any relationship with each other whatsoever. It makes sense why in the show Zuko would go after Aang and rescue him, and why Aang would want to save him after he got hit with the arrow. And then they have a whole conversation about it afterwards, like Aang's like, hey, I'm still holding out hope for you. And it didn't end up well, but at least there was some moments, there were some deep human connections between the characters. None of that's present with any of the characters whatsoever. It's just, it does hit the basic story beats, but as my friend Michael put it, it doesn't adapt the story. This movie is shitty cliff notes of a great show.
I think with the crap dialogue and the cut scenes, I'm pretty sure I said this when we were watching the film, but it's like none of these characters should care about each other. It's because there's no chemistry, they have no relationships at all. It's like, why do these people... There's no reason why these people should care about each other. From what we're shown, like they should not care. Like Aang shouldn't be maybe surprised that Zuko, the guy who's, you know, it was attacking him at the very beginning of the movie and that's it. Maybe he would be surprised, that I understand. But then they cut the scene from the show where they're in the woods and they have an actual meaningful conversation that builds their relationship even more. And their relationship builds up throughout all the seasons in the show. But it's like you still need those little details because you need to build up the relationship in that movie as well. You can't just save that for like another time. Like it's got to be a progressive thing. You got to build up to it.
Yeah, honestly, I would say the relationship between Aang and Zuko is arguably the most important one in the series.
Yes, it very much is.
Isn't in this.
Aang and Appa don't even have a good relationship in this movie.
Oh my gosh. And Momo?
Yeah, and Momo.
Oh god, Appa
yeah, we forgot to
Momo.
mention Momo. That's how little he is in this movie, and that's how much he doesn't matter to Aang. We completely forgot to mention Momo.
To be fair, Momo's not in the show much either.
But he's in it more than the movie.
Fair enough, fair enough.
And Aang cares, or at least shows, more emotion towards Momo in the show than he does in the movie.
Appa.
Like in the movie, he just flies on his shoulder, and then Aang's like, cool. And then you see him at the end of the movie, and then Aang's like, cool, and that's it.
I will say, speaking of Momo and Appa, holy shit is Appa ugly as shit in this movie.
Appa's face is disgusting.
Yeah, it's like, they don't show his...
We paused the movie to look at his face. We just stared at it.
It looks like just someone was punched in the face over and over. It's all swollen and purple. It just looks nasty. And thank God they don't show Appa's face that much. They knew the design they had for him was shit.
And to be fair, it's not really different than it is in the show. Like, that's a pretty good realistic creation of what it looks like in the show. Except in the show, it's a cartoon, so you don't really think about it.
So it's passable.
When it's in hyper-realistic CG, you can tell, oh god, this thing is fucking
Yeah, it doesn't
ugly.
even look like a realistic bison. It looks like the original Sonic the Hedgehog design.
Yep.
Part human, part animal, human teeth. God, it was ugly.
The good thing about, cartoons and animated content like media is because they can pull off certain stuff like that easier than if you had to do it in real life. The most obvious thing that you can see, the bending in the show and the action in the show and some of the big battles that they can do in the show are a lot easier, more time consuming because it's animated, but is easier for them to pull off because they don't have to hire stunt coordinators, then get stuntmen to do it, and then it's not this whole big thing where they have to make a whole day out of it. It's animated. So Appa looks good in the show because, like Casey, like you said, it's passable in the show because it's a cartoon. But then again, in the movie, it looks worse. I would prefer if they just straight up went with a completely different face from the cartoon. Like Riley said, I would much rather them just make him look like a real bison instead of trying to compare it to the show.
Right.
They did it, and it's not good, so they should have stopped a bit. Hey, let's just make it look more like the actual animal it's based off instead.
Yeah.
It may be different, but it's a compromise, essentially.
Appa is supposed to be cute as fuck. You don't
Yes,
you don't
everyone
fuck
loves
with my
Appa.
Appa, okay? You don't make my Appa look ugly.
If Appa looked like he does in this movie and the show, I would have cheered when he was kidnapped.
Yeah.
I would have been glad he was gone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he is...
Aang would have been too.
Terrifying in this movie. Oh my... Terrifyingly ugly.
He is not good. Also barely in the one thing I have with Appa just about his CGI, and I kind of noticed it when Momo flew on Aang's shoulder as well. They didn't do it very well when they're when Aang was touching Appa and touching Momo. It was very subtle, but that scene where he lands in the air temple and he jumps off of Appa and he's touching him on the side. He's like, all right, I'll be right back, buddy, kind of deal. The shadows around his hand where he's, touching Appa, they're there's too much and they're too dark. It looks too noticeable that he's not actually touching a bison, and when we're first introduced into Momo, his hand is it's very subtle, like I said, but his hand is actually above Momo when he quote pets him. It's just a little bit higher than Momo should actually be, like we were explaining before, those small details.
Want to know what's another good small detail that we've mentioned before?
What's up?
None of the bad guys are intimidating. And the worst one of all, which fortunately is exactly what happens next in the movie, Oze is not intimidating at all. He's just some dude.
Not at all.
In the show,
dude.
for the longest time, keep Oze hidden to build up suspense. And when you are finally introduced to him, he's this buff, handsome firebender, played by Mark Hamill.
The Joker.
And this is just some dude who talks to Zhao a few times. Also, he's noticeably less mean than in the show, which is weird.
Exactly. That was the thing I mentioned earlier. My problem with Zuko's origin. Zuko's origin was explored in the episode The Storm, and we saw everything about it, and it was really emotionally impactful and tragic.
Yeah, but what if we had a scene where Zhao says, as you know, Zuko's backstory?
Well, that happens, and then Zuko and Iroh are hanging out at some restaurant or wherever the fuck, and then this kid walks up to him and he goes, hey, how's it going? Tell me about Zuko. And it was this 20-second conversation they had. Okay, there's this very emotional, that fleshes out a very sympathetic character. Nah, let's just flush that down the toilet for a 20-second conversation. But it's also established in that origin that it's true to the show, that it was Ozai was the one that fought Zuko in the Agni Kai and scarred him and banished him. So it's established that that's what happened. But throughout the entire movie, you don't get the feeling that Ozai hates Zuko. If anything, he's just kind of disappointed by him. Because, if anything, it's Admiral Zhao that is the one that's constantly reminding Ozai, hey, remember your son? He's a loser. He did this. He did that. And Ozai is oh, yeah, I guess you're right. And it's no, at the very least, Ozai is supposed to hate Zuko with a burning passion, not have to be reminded by one of his subordinates constantly.
Yeah, the worst example of this, it was what I was getting at earlier. After the Blue Spirit adaptation, Zhao goes to Ozai and is hey, your son is the Blue Spirit and he betrayed me. How does Zhao know that? I don't know. They cut out the scene where he figured it out. Whatever. And Ozai's What? My son is a traitor? No, he isn't. He wouldn't do that. And even if he is, don't hurt him. What? No! Ozai's an abusive prick. He wouldn't specifically order Zuko to be protected. And Zhao just ignores that order because Ozai tells him not to murder Zuko, and then smash cut to Zhao murdering Zuko by blowing up his ship.
Yeah, Ozai's kind of just like disappointed dad in this film, rather than, genocidal warlord.
You see, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Like in the show, like you said, Kate, you don't see his face for the first 2 seasons because we understand that he's this genocidal warlord. But no, in this one, he's just kind of just hanging out with basic voice monologues and talking how disappointed I am in my son.
He's just some chubby guy walking around. That's all the Fire Lord is.
I just don't. You have to look for like the scariest looking dude you can, or at least put enough makeup on him to look scary. Uncle Iroh should have been Fire Lord Ozai.
Oh yeah, can we talk about Iroh? Iroh's weirdly intimidating in this movie, because in the show, Iroh is constantly oscillating between dumb fat old man and this badass warrior who's wise and cares about his nephew. In this, he is always in wise mode. He never acts dumb, which I don't like it as much, but credit where credit's due, Iroh's actor isn't bad at him. He's just not
It's
great.
the same guy who played Yinsen in Iron Man.
Oh! Oh shit! He does fine. The Fire Nation in general,
he does
except
fine,
for Ozai, is fine. They look amazing because the main characters are awful, but they're just okay.
I will say, I think of all of the returning characters, the only one that is, like, passable, especially in comparison to the other ones, is Iroh's character. Like, Iroh was at least kinda done justice. The rest of the characters are miscast, poorly written, poorly directed, shit actors. Except Dev Patel. He's bad in this movie, but that's not because he's a bad actor, it's because he was miscast.
And that's always the problem. When a character is bad in the movie, how much blame should we place on the actor? How much should we place on the writer and director? Which in this case are the same. I kind of feel for Dev Patel because he's a really good actor, but I don't think any actor, even if you were the greatest actor ever, could have the line, "Bring me all your elderly," be intimidating.
Yeah. I mean, Dev Patel is outspoken, a big fan of the animation, and he's actually come forward and apologized to fans. He's like, I'm so sorry we fucked that up for you guys. I beat myself up. That's how much I hate it.
I read online that while they were filming this, he was like watching the show, and then while they were on set, if they had any breaks, he would like rewatch certain episodes that are Zuko heavy so he can better play the role.
So much preparation.
Which is good. And then you get this.
So the gang arrives at the Northern Water Tribe. They cut out like pretty much the entire first episode of them being at the Northern Water Tribe, but I don't really mind that. That was just with the Master Dude being a dick to Katara. They get there and they start training, and the Fire Nation's like, okay, we're gonna invade the North. And it's so ridiculous. Zhao recruits Iroh, and it's the funniest scene in the movie. I dare say, even funnier than the Pebble Dance, because Zhao has no tact. When he recruits Iroh, he says, "You were once a great general, Exposition. You were responsible for the 100-day siege of Ba Sing Se. Didn't your son die in that battle?" Yes. Oh. Hey, didn't your nephew die a few days ago? Like, within 20 seconds, Zhao brings up Iroh's dead loved ones twice. Like, the dude has no tact, and it's hilarious.
Again, so much terrible exposition. It's so bad. Also, it is explained, one of the funniest things to me was when they get to the Northern Water Tribe, they stay there for weeks. And we know that because the narration tells us, it expositions us. We've been there for weeks, and over those weeks, Sokka and Yue have formed a relationship. Again, characters have not only do they not have any relationships with each other, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't have any chemistry with each other. They're just poor, stale, shit actors.
So 2 things. Number 1, at this point, we're halfway through the movie, and the last half takes place in the same amount of time that it took in the show, as I said earlier. So none of the, it's quickened, but they didn't have the time. That doesn't apply anymore. It's just shit. And number 2, I mean, in the show, Yue and Sokka, I'm going to be real, they get together really quickly, but they at least had a few scenes of interact before they fell in love. In this, it's Katara saying, in narration, Soka and Yue became close friends.
Yeah. And the very first time we see Yue is like an over-the-head shot of the back of her head, and I thought to myself, I said, her hair looks like a dick. And then sitting right next to me, Ralen goes, her hair looks like a dick.
Yeah, I pointed at the TV and screamed it.
Her hair, it is a penis! How did no one catch that?
I will say, though, Yue is not very well fleshed out. She doesn't have very much presence in this movie. But her actor is, I would say, better than all the other ones. That's not saying much. That's a really low fucking bar.
Yeah, Seychelle Gabriel does a fantastic job as this terrible character who gets no screen time. She did such a good job that she impressed the creators of the show, and they cast her as Asami Sato in the sequel series. So that's one good thing that came out of this.
Absolutely. She was good.
She's a good voice actress.
She was good. She did what she could with this terrible script, and she tried her best. And her literal dickhead. I feel really bad saying that, but I just calling her a dickhead.
It's so noticeable. It's so noticeable. We were literally all thinking.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if you're listening to this. I don't think you ever will. But it's just so funny.
But again, like we were saying with Dev Patel, even though she's a good actress, it doesn't work because how she's being told to act and all of her lines are so bad. Like, she's a great actress, but no actor on the planet can make the line. It's time we show the Fire Nation that we believe in our beliefs as strongly as they believe in their beliefs. No one can make that line work!
Oh my god. The guy who wrote The Sixth Sense wrote this movie.
He wrote that. They should have brought that up in the interview.
Exactly.
And see how he responded with that.
What the fuck were you thinking, Shyamalan, with this line? Well,
dude, that's
just
quotable.
American audiences just don't understand, okay?
We just don't understand. We're Americans.
We're just ignorant, okay? We're just ignorant. Another thing that bugged me throughout this movie was obviously the fact that they cast most of the speaking roles of the heroes were white actors. But it's also, in the Southern Water Tribe, a majority of the extras are of Inuit descent. And the Southern Water Tribe, it's explained in the show that the reason why the Southern Water Tribe, it's just essentially a series of huts, like a little village at this point, because the Fire Nation had raided it so many times, that's all the people were left with. And that explains that. But then the Northern Water Tribe, they had a lot more security, and they have this lavish palace and kingdom made of ice, and it works. But in the movie, all of the non-white people are in the poorly constructed village, whereas in the Northern Water Tribe, this big, lavish kingdom is made of mostly white actors. So again, right there, you're implying right there that, oh yeah, all of the great civilizations, yeah, that's all white people. All the non-white people, they don't have good civilizations. Like, come on, Shyamalan. Again.
And bending, I guess they never mentioned this, but in the series, bending is genetic. So all the waterbenders are Inuit, even though they live on different poles. And maybe that is kind of dumb, but whatever. They're the same group of people, which makes sense because, bending is genetic if all the waterbenders are descended from the same group of people.
Yeah.
But, all the waterbenders are white in this. And also, I wonder if they were going to include something from the show where Sokka and Katara's grandmother is from the Northern Water Tribe. Because all the people of the Northern Water Tribe are white, and so is their grandmother, and so are them.
Thank you, Shyamalan. Thank you, studio. Thank you, Paramount.
Thank you.
So the Fire Nation, they start invading the Northern Water Tribe, and the pace crawls to a snail's pace. It's so slow.
Yeah, but at least it's revealed that Zuko's still alive.
Oh yeah, he just, boom, he's there.
Faked his death. Sneaks into the Northern Water Tribe to kidnap the Avatar.
Yep.
And Aang decides, I need to go to the spirit world to find out how to destroy the Fire Nation Navy. So he does that. We don't get the cool journey with him going through this weird world and meeting Ko the Face Stealer, but hey, He goes to the spirit world at least.
Oh, but dragon. They need to show
Of
you
course.
dragon.
Dragon.
That they don't even show right away.
No.
Because he takes a nap before he goes into the spirit world.
That was the other thing, too, that bugged me, is it's like, the reason why... Alright, so we all know, Zuko breaks into the koi fish area, pond, tree, spirit world, whatever. He fights Katara, knocks her out, steals Aang, ties him up, and takes him. The reason why Zuko was able to take Aang was because Aang was in the spirit world and therefore was unable to feel what was going on with his physical body. But in the movie, it's established he doesn't go into the spirit world until after Zuko already kidnapped him. Which means that the entire time, he was just like taking a nap or something, or fully conscious. You could have done something, Aang! Come on!
Also, in the show, Katara has a really cool fight with Zuko, where they're evenly matched, and in this, he just fucking bodies her immediately. Katara never does anything meaningful in this movie. At one point, she, shoves the dude, but no, screw having Katara be cool.
Also, just to go along with the really bad editing of this movie, the editing in this movie is ass. I'll get into that later. But there's a shot right when Katara's standing over Aang, or Aang rather, and she turns around, and Zuko is standing there very awkwardly holding a giant torch that half of the size of his body. And then he puts the torch on the ground, lighting the grass on fire. Cuts back to Katara, saying, "I remember you." And then it cuts back to Zuko, and now all of a sudden there's 6 fire patches surrounding him. Where the fuck? Continuity, people! You're all experts in your fields. Come on.
Also, Katara, he can't create fire. You're next to a pond. Put it out, you moron.
Zuko and her were both standing right next to the pond. They were literally on the edge of the pond. I was like, she could have just snapped her fingers and the fire would have went out. But to go off of the whole lighting the grass thing, that's absolutely right. He bends down and lights one portion of the grass, and when we cut back, he's in a ring of fire. It's what happened?
None of this makes any sense.
So, Zhao mentions, because of his trip to the Great Library, the library, it is great, the Great Library! Because of his trip to the Great Library, he knows that the waterbenders get their power from the moon. And the moon's physical manifestation is a koi fish in the Northern Water Tribe's secret pond place. So he goes there with Iroh and just fucking murders the fish, causes a red moon. Iroh does not like this, and it zooms in on Iroh's eye twice in short succession, and it's weird.
It is weird. I remember seeing that being oh my gosh, that was weird.
Let me tell you something. For this scene, what I wrote down, this is what I wrote down. I said, Zhao killing spirit scene, - fuck you. All caps. That's what I wrote.
When he killed the fish, I just wrote down, fuck you, fish. That's all I wrote down.
Yeah, and also, weird thing about Zhao's acting in that scene, he seems kind of hesitant. The whole point of his character is that he's so arrogant that he would do this even though it's going to destroy the world, basically. But no, he's I'm gonna stab the fish. I stabbed the fish.
I mean, in the show, what happens is Zhao bags up the koi fish, which does make sense because koi fish are very easy to kill from what I've heard. They're very slow and lethargic.
I mean, are there any fish that aren't easy to kill?
True. But he lifts it out of the water, and as he's about to kill it, Aang, Katara, all of the people, including Iroh, confront him, saying, "Don't do that." And it's a crazy, awesome scene. A great moment for Iroh. He's screaming at him, "Whatever you do to that fish, I will unleash upon you tenfold. Let it go now." And then Zhao stands there for a little bit. When he took the fish out, the spirits, the moon and the sea, became out of sync, and the moon and the sky turned red, and the waterbenders lost all their powers. When Iroh confronted him, Zhao put the fish back in the water, and then he used his fire to kill it, and then the moon left the sky. It just went all dark. The moon is dead. But in the show, the sky and the moon stayed red the entire time. And I'm that's one of the reasons why I said fuck you. And that awesome character moment Iroh had there. Gone. Fuck you again. Zhao's mischaracterization in that scene. Fuck you. Just everything about that scene was so shitty. And oh my god. Did we even mention, what was it, before or after?
We accidentally skipped. So Zuko, he kidnaps Aang. Aang goes into the spirit world. He talks to the dragon, and the dragon's like, "Hey, be the Avatar. Do your stuff. Bye." Boring fucking waste of a character. Whatever. Zuko talks to Aang. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's dialogue taken right from the series where he talks about his motives and his father doesn't love him. He wants acceptance. His sister's the prodigy, yada, yada, yada. And that's nice. Aang wakes up to have a nice fight. It's actually taking some choreography from the show. But you see, the thing is, they fight in like a tea shop or something. Or this place full of pots. And it's a nice fight, but the problem is, in the show, they fight out in a blizzard. And it's cool because A, it makes Zuko feel helpless. Like, even though he's got the Avatar, he's gonna die. And after Aang knocks Zuko out, he decides to take Zuko with him so Zuko doesn't die. But we don't get that. It's just, they knock Zuko out and... Actually, no, we do get Aang basically saving Zuko's life because he tells Katara, hey, leave him an air hole when you encase him in ice.
And then as he's walking out of the room, he goes, we could be friends. And then walks out.
It's like, no, you're not, because you guys don't care about each other.
Yeah, in the show, that line was right after the Blue Spirit, but yeah, sure, after they tried to kill each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that whole scene could have had so much emotional weight to it had they had that conversation.
It's one of the best scenes in the show, and it just...
Yeah, they could have had so much weight to it had they had that conversation after the Blue Spirit. But they didn't, so none of it means anything. Added to the fact that those lines of Zuko telling Aang, like, about his life and about how his dad loves his sister more and he's trying to get his honor back, that's taken right out of the show. That's, like, such an amazing moment in the show. It's such a deep character moment where Zuko's, like, telling an unconscious kid, this is why I'm doing it. And that's off to the side. Zuko's having this amazing character moment, but it's not even the main focus of the scene. It's like Aang is trying to escape when he's telling us about it. Again, such wasted potential. It's so bad.
Back in the thing that we talked about earlier, before we forgot about the shit with Zuko that was messed up because no blizzard of hopelessness. Zhao kills the fish by stabbing it. Iroh gets the eye zoom. Iroh creates fire out of nowhere, which we've talked about it. It makes what we talked about earlier pointless. Firebenders should just be able to create fire, goddammit. And then Yue's like, as a child, I was brought back to life by the moon spirit. I will now become the moon spirit. Okay.
Well, you see, the thing about that is, that's what happens in the show, is it's like, she knows, like, this is what my purpose is, this is what it is.
Yeah, but Iroh tells her in this, which is
mansplaining, again.
He does mansplain. Iroh basically tells her to kill herself.
Oh shit, you're right.
Before she starts speaking, Iroh's just like, hey, and this is paraphrasing, he's like, kind of like, hey, you might want to, like, jump in there and save the world.
Yeah,
and she was like, she was, like, hesitant at first. And I'm like, in the show, that's the only thing she talks about is, like, how she's connected to the spirits.
Having to be convinced kind of takes away her,
character.
Role in the story and strength as a character.
Oh no, we're gonna lose this character who's had this amazing romance with Sokka and this really long, important subplot in the movie, right? No, they held hands once, and he smiled at her really, really uncomfortably.
Oh, they kissed. Don't
kissed
forget
one time.
They did kiss. They kissed
and
one time.
And then Iroh had to mansplain her killing herself. So not only does this movie...
He can waterbend now, and you know what that means? It's time for Aang to go kill a bunch of people. In the show, he, like, fuses with the ocean spirit and becomes, like, an out-of-control monster. In this, he just creates a giant tidal wave that destroys all the ships.
It doesn't even destroy all the ships! It just scares them away!
It destroys a few of them, though!
It scares them away!
No ships get destroyed, right? It just scares them away.
Wait, shit. Oh god, I guess I wasn't paying attention. I assumed at least one or two would have been flipped over. Does it just push them back?
No, it doesn't even do that. It's just like...
It just scares
they're just like, oh no, we better retreat.
Oh, shit.
And then they leave.
I mean, it's cool looking, and it's probably the best CG in the movie, but...
Because that's where all the money went.
I don't know. Aang losing control and smashing shit's nice.
The thing is, I was thinking about that more today, and in a way, I'm glad they went with that. Because I feel like if they would have attempted to do a big CGI spirit monster, I think I would have been more offended by the movie. So I guess in a way, having like a replacement of, instead of him turning into the spirit, he just bends the entire ocean in one move, which is fine, but like he should have flipped some ships literally in the movie, all he does is just lift it up and then they get scared. But like the Fire Nation doesn't get scared easily because they, committed genocide against an entire culture.
Multiple times.
Yeah, so I don't think they're scared with it's a very big wave, but I don't think they're scared of the wave, especially when there's an entire fleet there. So when he lifted the wave, he should have flipped a handful of ships, so then they would have been like, oh, hey, our ships have no chance against that. Let's retreat. Not just lift water and be like, nope, I'm out. Sorry, Fire Lord.
Ooh, by the way, speaking of action scenes that are made lame, in the show, the final battle of the season is a duel between Zhao and Zuko, and it's pretty cool. But in this one, I was just like, come on, Zuko, we're leaving. No fighting. Okay.
They took that moment where Zuko and Zhao have that Agni Kai and Zhao tries attacking him while his back is turned and Iroh stops him. That was a cool moment, but that happened like half a season earlier in the show, so it's so out of place here.
Yeah.
Also, let's talk about Zhao's death. In the show, the ocean spirit kills him, and it's kind of... Well, actually, it drags him off to the spirit world, and he shows up again in Legend of Korra. But the ocean spirit basically kills him, and it's like, okay, this is karmic punishment. He messed with the basic forces of nature. He gets killed by them. In this, just like 4 waterbenders come out and drown him, and it's brutal.
Straight up murder.
You could hear his screams from that water bubble they were putting him in. It's brutal.
I don't mind that.
No.
I don't mind that. It works good in Legend of Korra with that famous Zahir scene, but I do like the irony of Zhao's defeat. I guess death's not the right word.
I agree with that, and I do agree with your point, Ralen, of how it does make more sense that he would make the tidal wave as opposed to turning himself into a giant spirit monster. It's kind of like how the Watchmen movie changed the giant squid attack at the end to like a nuclear bomb.
Although, to be fair, Watchmen's a thing we need to do sometime, but to play devil's advocate, the squid thing was an alien. In Watchmen, it changes it to just Dr. Manhattan going nuts and killing everyone, which I feel humanity uniting to fight a common threat and humanity uniting because if they don't, Dr. Manhattan will kill them aren't really the same thing.
Not at all.
We need to watch that sometime. But we have other bad Zack Snyder movies to do first.
But the whole wave thing kind of goes back to what I said earlier about like there's just like some things that a cartoon or an anime can like pull off easier because like they can pull off that monster and have it be epic. But it's like when it's live action, it's like, you should probably substitute it with something else because you most likely don't have the time or money to do it correctly. Although I do want to say really quickly that in the show, when Zhao is taken away, my favorite part about that moment is that Zuko, one, tries to save him, which shows that Zuko's a better man than Zhao, develops him more as a person, which I like. And then Zhao pulls his hand back and like accepts his fate.
Yeah.
It's like he shows doubt after it's done, which I like. I really like that moment. But in the movie, like you said, Casey, like he shows doubt when he's about to kill the spirit. And then, the way he's quote killed in this one is he's actually just straight up killed. But in the show, he like accepts his death with the or accepts his punishment from the spirits. So that's why I really didn't like when he's murdered in the movie, because I was like, that was really good in the show because I really liked that writing. They're just like, nah, 4 random people come out and just murder him.
Pride overexceeds his will to live, and he chooses to not be saved by his mortal enemy, Zuko. A 17-year-old kid. Yes, you're right. It was such a good moment in the show. Not at all present in the movie. After all the ships leave, after they flee because of a giant tidal wave, Aang gently lets the tidal wave down, walks back down the steps where Katara and Sokka grab his arms. He's not tired. He's not injured. No, they just grab his arms to help him walk.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. He's like half limping too. They're just helping him down the steps.
He finds that literally every single person in the Water Tribe, including all the Fire Nation that were left over from the battle, are kneeling to him. And I will say that was at least kind of an interesting because there was a little subplot of him refusing to accept his responsibility of being the Avatar. That's why he ran away. That's why he was unable to stop the Fire Nation from attacking. That's why he wasn't there to save Monk Gyatso. His arc in this film is accepting his role as the Avatar. And everyone bows to him and he bows back. But he looks terrified. And I guess that was a good idea. Like, that made sense, at least. But that one semi-decent subplot in this movie cannot save it. And then immediately cut to the cliffhanger ending, where Ozai tells his daughter, Zuko's sister Azula, asking her if she accepts her mission of tracking down the Avatar, and she accepts it. Cut to black.
Sequel bait. Oh, and by the way, this movie has like 10 minutes of credits, so it's really only a 93-minute movie.
Oh my god. This was the thing I was saving to the end here. After everything that we talked about this, just all the shit, let me run off the IMDb page, just a little section of it. This movie was written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, the man who at one point was considered the next Steven Spielberg. This movie was produced by Kathleen Kennedy and her husband. The cinematography by the same guy who DP'd all 3 Lord of the Rings movies and all 3 Hobbit movies. This movie was edited by the guy who edited Titanic, Terminator 2, and The Abyss. This movie had so much talent behind it, so much love going into it. Something based on such great source material, so much talent, love, great source material. The cards were stacked ever so in their favor, and they just failed so miserably. The writing is lazy, the editing is clumsy, the cinematography is terrible, the acting is atrocious, the directing is bad, half the CGI is shit. This movie is not good. It's a PG movie based on a kid's animated show. It's a movie for kids, but at the same time, what about the massive adult fan base? You're screwing them over by making a bad movie, by making a movie for kids and just making it a shit movie. This movie is terrible.
Also, part of the reason why Avatar is so acclaimed is because it isn't really a kids show. It's for kids, but it deals with dark themes and complex, well-written characters and a serialized story. At the time, like now there have been other things that have followed in its footsteps, but at the time, it was revolutionary. Yeah. So don't say that this movie, it could have been bad because it was for kids. That's insulting to kids, and it's insulting to the show.
Exactly. Like I said, it's a PG movie based on a kids show. But it's not just a kids show, and it's not just for kids. So by making it just a dumb, bad kids movie, you're screwing over literally all of your audience. So just fuck you. Heading to the fact that it does have a lot of racial and misogynistic undertones to it, if you really think about it. And even if you don't think about it, it's all whitewashed. God damn it. It's just so frustratingly bad.
Everything you can fuck up in this movie, they made sure they did. I only had one good thing that I liked. Casey only had like 5, and what, you only had like 2,
Probably,
Riley?
yeah. What was your one good thing again, Ralen?
Hang on, because I don't remember. Oh, the spirit. Actually, did I even bring that up? The spirit world. So, okay, the spirit world. Let me explain. I don't like the dragon. I thought the dragon was just stupid. I thought it was a stupid replacement for Roku. I would much prefer Roku. And I think the audience, people who didn't watch the show, like if I think of that scene from someone who hasn't watched the show and only wanted to watch the movie for the movie, it would make more sense for them to actually introduce Roku that early, because later when Aang is captured, Zhao makes a comment saying, I would kill you now, but you'll just be reborn.
Right.
And that's the only time in the entire movie that they mention the Avatar being a reincarnation. Yeah. And that's such an important part of the Avatar. That is why they're so powerful. That is why they keep the balance. That is why they're so wise, is because they're able to connect with past lives, with past experiences. And in the show, you know, obviously Aang talks to not just Roku, he's talked to other avatars like Kyoshi when he literally turns into Kyoshi. But in that scene where you first meet the dragon, that should be Roku instead, and they should very briefly just say that, you know, I'm your past life. So then that comment later saying, oh, you'll be reborn, it'll be like, oh, that makes more sense. And then you can infer that Aang is going to go into the spirit world again later in the film to specifically seek out Roku. But in the movie, so ignoring the dragon part, I do like that he did go into the spirit world that quickly, because once again, for this movie, since they have to pack so much into one movie, like an entire season of a show into one movie, I'm okay with them dropping hints of the spirit world throughout the movie, slowly building up that part of the story of the lore of the Avatar. I just wish it was Roku. Also, and this was my, Riley, you know this, but this was like my biggest gripe with Legend of Korra, is like the spirit world is just not scary in the film. Like the spirit world is supposed to represent, essentially, it's very close to death, you know, not only in the show but in real life. Like that's what it's considered. It's very close to death. So in this movie, it's kind of just generic, completely blue, blurry with some cool circle lights, and then that's it.
Right.
But once again, it's a movie, so maybe they had to make some adjustments, but I don't like those adjustments.
No.
So
It just sucked.
Is there anything else we can say about this film that we haven't already?
No.
This film is, from the first lines to the final bow, just bad. A terrible adaptation. Terribly acted, terribly written. The dialogue is stilted and wooden. The pacing is whack. M. Night Shyamalan clearly liked the show, but was deeply unqualified to adapt it.
I wonder what his daughter thinks of the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
Also the blue spirit mask was cool. It was a good mask.
At least the costumes were good.
Didn't like the hair. I understand if that's more accurate to real life, but I don't really like the hair. Also, it doesn't kind of make sense to me. Like, if it is a real life thing, then how the hell do people see out of it? Because having a mask over you is already cutting off some of your peripherals, and then just having that much hair, I don't understand how it's, especially since he was spinning around and fighting. Like, that hair's going everywhere. But that's just me being annoyed. But yeah, I wonder what his daughter thinks of the movie.
You know, honestly, I bet she's just so. Yeah, Dad, you did it. You did a good job, Dad. I love you. You're a very good father, is the thing.
You did your best.
I bet when he announced that, that film wasn't that good, I own up to that. She was like, yes, finally! Dad, that movie was awful. God, Unbreakable was good. Sixth Sense was good, but Dad, this was your low point.
and then he came out with After Earth immediately after.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That movie.
Here's what I would have wanted to see out of a film like this. M. Night Shyamalan, I don't blame him entirely. He does deserve some of it, but not all of it. He's just very unqualified to make this movie. He had never made an action film. He was just laughably limited by the studio and stuff like that. Here's what I wanted. If they wanted a filmmaker of Asian descent who had done action, who was well versed in the culture, I think someone like Ang Lee would have been better suited to make this film. Ang Lee made Life of Pi, Brokeback Mountain.
Life of Pi is a very good movie, by the way. If you guys haven't seen it, I'd suggest watching it.
Oh yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a good book, too.
Oh yeah, I read the book when I was in high school.
Ang Lee would have been much better off directing this movie. I can't guarantee that it would have been great, but I think that I would have liked to have seen him sooner than I would have wanted to see Shyamalan.
Ang Lee also did Brokeback Mountain.
Really?
Yes, which I didn't realize until like 2 years ago when I had to watch Brokeback Mountain for one of my cinema classes in my junior college. I was like, oh, look at that. Ang Lee.
Also, he made Hulk.
Yeah.
Really? I did not know that.
Not the Incredible Hulk, the 2003 one. So, after everything we've said, what type of score is this movie gonna get? On Rotten Tomatoes, it's 5%. Critics hated it. Ralen, since you're the guest, would you like to give your score on the number of 1 to 10 first?
Sure. I give this movie a 2.
That's fair.
I think I'm also going to give it a 2, just because the production design and the costuming was, for the most part, pretty solid. I'd say a good portion of the special effects were pretty good as well, but just literally that's it. Everything else about this movie's trash. So it does have a couple good things going for it, but most everything else is just horrendously bad. It just, as an adaptation, it's horrible. But even as a solo movie, like, I know the very first episode, the show that we did was the Death Note. Like, Casey and I think you and I agree, Death Note is better as a standalone movie than it is an adaptation. But this movie, even as a standalone movie, it's just horrible. Like, how the fuck did the guy who made The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable make a piece of shit like this?
Well, you see, executive modeling.
Very true. Very true.
And also, he's not good at writing dialogue. True. And also, he tried to cram 20 episodes into 100 minutes.
You're proving my point here, my guy.
You know, the dynamic on the show is that I try to be the nicer one and look at the positives. I will say, this film has a good plot outline. Like, if you look at the synopsis of it, it's not bad. But the acting is awful. The dialogue's awful. Visually, it's good. This is one of those movies that would be better if you didn't speak English. But I do speak English, so I'm going to give it, I don't know, a 4.5.
Oh, wow.
And that was our review for the live-action Last Airbender movie, with our guest speaker, the resident Avatar Last Airbender expert, Ralen Stevens.
Oh, expert's very generous, thank you.
Yeah. Ralen, where can our audience find you if they're interested in whatever it is you do.
Oh, well, thank you for asking. You can follow subscribe to my YouTube, Ralen Stevens. Ralen is Ralen, for those of you wondering, since everyone always misspells my name. My Instagram, Ralen_Stevens. On my YouTube, go check out the short film, The Apples Have Eyes. It's a comedy. Riley's in it. I directed and edited it. And then there's another short film of mine that's a bit longer than The Apples Have Eyes that will be coming out soon. It's in post-production right now, called To Save a Soul. It's a drama starring Riley and I about a boy who loses someone close to him and is now dealing with new ideas of death and how those new ideas challenge his religious views.
Ooh, I'll have to keep my eye out for
Yeah,
that.
a lot of great stuff. A lot of really good stuff. And I'm not just saying that because
Yeah,
I'm
and
in
a lot
it.
and a lot more on the way.
You can all find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where you can check out all of my short films and video essays. Check out my short film Silence of the Karens that recently just got accepted into a film festival, so more updates on that as it comes. Thank you. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe, all one word.
You can find me on Twitter at Jarmes Casey, JarmesCasey. You can find just basically everything I've ever done, including all my short stories, at caseyjarmes.wordpress.com. We'll be back Riley and I will be back next week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back into hiding.
Yeah, go back to the iceberg, Raylan.
I'm gonna go back and wait for the next Last Airbender podcast.
Yeah, okay. We'll be back next week unless our names get mispronounced so many times that we just walk off set. Next episode, Valentine's Day. Well, 2 days after Valentine's Day, we're doing a romantic movie.
Oh,
really? We normally don't like romance on this podcast, but I actually really like this rom-com. We're doing Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's a good movie with a weird
Looking
name.
forward to it.
I've never heard of that movie, actually.
Oh, it's good. You should watch it or listen to our episode.
Yeah, or do both.
I'll do both. Yeah, I'm gonna do both.
As always, I'm Casey Jarmes.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And I'm Ralen Stevens.
And hey, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it, especially not to a writer.